Hey everybody, welcome and thanks so much for tuning in. On today's episode of conventioNOT, Ryan and I sit down and chat with Javid Jah. Javid is a Toronto-based artist. He's an architect. You know what, I'm just going to label him a creative because it makes it that much easier to not try and fit him into a single box. You know, I'm just such a fan of this guy, and it's amazing to see how far he's come. That's not to say when I met him, he was, not already an accomplished artist with enormous ambitions. But to appreciate what he's done in the last 10 years, his dedication to so many things, his dedication to the choices he's made, and his commitment to live his life further to those choices and decisions that he's made are nothing short of inspiring. I'm not going to get into the details. I really strongly encourage you, though, to check this one out when you've got some time to not just listen, but actually contemplate what this man has to say. Before you do that, though, I just want to thank you, as always, for tuning in. Javid Jah on conventioNOT.
No worries.
This is, come on, who are we kidding? 60 episodes in, and they still continue. It turns out there's infinite amount of user error problems that Ryan and I can continue to struggle through. On that note, I want to hurry up and get a proper introduction to my good friend. It's been a minute. It's been too long. Javid, if you would... instead of me minimizing or failing to adequately introduce you, bro, give me the quick elevator pitch, man. I know what I know you as, but I want you to share yourself.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, you have to write so much and say so. If you're an artist trying to make it, you got to propose yourself so many times that you have to kind of become indifferent to the bragging or arrogance that comes with it, yeah, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this. And it's like, man, can I just be this person? And if you heard about me, I can answer some questions. But no, you have to tell people who you are.
You have to qualify yourself now.
There's no way around it, So in the simplest way, I think I'm a creative who has decided to obliterate any disciplinary restrictions. So I started with paint, and I gravitated towards walls, outdoor paint, because I was kind of anti-gallery as a place of establishment and not really reaching the folk. I grew up with hip hop, so naturally gravitated towards graffiti. But then I was really big on kind of social justice, and I was big into Diego Rivera and this idea of massive murals symbolizing the proletariat, symbolizing people that have been marginalized. So I kind of moved closer into that world of arts empowerment and youth programming. And the graffiti was cool to me. I loved it, but I was more interested in massive mural with big message. And about after 10 years of that world, I kind of actually came across an artist from India who was deaf. And so he used painting to communicate. And he was a contemporary of Diego's. And he kind of moved from the art of surface into space. And that kind of made me start thinking about, well, it's not just about this wall, is it? It's really about the space that's encompassed by the wall. If we want to talk about impact on the community scale and not just a good looking piece of art. So that really led me into architecture. And I wanted to do it full on. So I'm really not a academic kind of guy, but in order to take on architecture, to be an architect, you got to do a master's. You got to go through this process where, some of my professors would say, they rip another one into you. That's a term they used.
Yeah. They're proud of it.
So I went through that process, and it was tough. I mean, in one sense, it's a world that doesn't have much color. It doesn't have much feminine energy even. And anything that doesn't come from a European modernist perspective is labeled as vernacular. So Adobe Hut, vernacular. Islamic
Sure.
architecture, vernacular. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And it's kind of like it's like reliving all of the hidden tropes that we live in our society, but seeing it face on. So kind of architecture opened up my whole approach to visual art practice. And so now I live in this space in between where I'm like interested in the installation world. I still paint murals, I still paint, but I'm more interested in like how do we create spaces people occupy, and in terms of what concepts are I'm interested in what I call cosmology, or what is called cosmology, which is really questioning how the human has a relationship to the universe. And really it looks at this one idea which comes from my ancestors and the Sufis, who are like the mystics of Islam. That kind of they said basically, you know what, maybe the universe lives inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could know yourself, you could know all. And that kind of assumption is what I'm trying to test in my work. And it comes out in various forms. It comes out in looking at like the chakras as planets, or it comes out in looking at like the astrolabe as a tool for following a planetary orbit, and then the geometries that planets show if you monitor their position in the sky over long periods of time. So all of these things are kind of informing my practice. This is a very long intro, isn't it?
No, it's perfect, dude, because this is exactly why this is exactly why I passed the mic to you. I would have been like, hey, I want you guys to meet my buddy Javid. He's graffiti artist turned architect, but he can't put the brush down. He is dynamic. Meet him. And you just gave a very honest and thorough surface, bro. You're still at the surface of where you want to get to, and that's why I love you, man. That's serious.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, a lot of these like guys that I really look up to, like Ai Weiwei, there's a certain depth through the work that in order to permeate it, you'll have to contemplate. And a contemplation is a big word in my practice, because for us, I think we've lost the idea of what contemplation means. Like there's like people who are like in an extreme where they're looking at meditation and new age spirituality. And there's other people that are just like, yeah, I'm thinking a lot about these issues. But contemplation is this middle ground where you have to combine, intellect and kind of like a sacred practice, a traditional practice. And that's that realm that I try to move in between, where I'm trying to represent a tradition I inherited through modern technologies, sciences, virtual media, etc., to create an interface for people to be like, oh shit, that's what you guys have been fucking with all these years. That's why we have this missing element in our life. We're like searching for something, we don't know what it is. Because, the modernist framework is so separate from the idea of sacred, like that we can't even discuss what a sacred is. Like I can walk into a church and now I know what the sacred is, but you don't. Because you're not contemplating it. You're just trying to empirically understand it. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is to give voice to something that doesn't have one. And so it's really like a lifelong spiritual struggle that I'm kind of lucky enough to test out in my professional practice.
Yep.
It's kind of what's happening. Like I just
you're getting paid, bro. Yeah, you're getting paid to do it now, right? I mean, like,
and it's not like I make coin, like heavy coin or anything. It's just that I make enough to live, and so then I would rather pay attention to these, to what I feel like is really lost in our society right now.
Dude, I'm trying to think of. Sorry, Ryan, just real quick, because like this is the Javid I know now, but I think we probably met like 10 years ago or so. Yeah. And I'm not trying to minimize or shorten the duration of your practice, which has clearly been going on for a lot longer than 10 years, bro. But like, when I first met you, me and Nicole are walking around Kensington. You got pieces up everywhere, and you had a very unique style. I don't think anybody would debate that at all. I was drawn to it immediately, and I think I was wandering around outside the shop, and you just came out one day, and you're like, "What's up, man?" And I was like, "I don't know, what's up?" and we just started talking, and I was like, holy shit, you're the guy that does all these pieces? And then like 5 minutes later, I was just like, you're not like the other dudes that I've met in dark alleys putting color on walls. So I honestly, Javid, it's amazing to see, and we're gonna get into it, but just to see where you're at right now,
Appreciate that.
10 years later, bro, like, yeah, you've been dedicated, man. You've been dedicated.
Yeah, you know, sometimes the way that we look at time is not really how growth happens. I remember those days when I met you. Was that in Kensington? Like I was at 185 Augusta?
Yeah, you were living at 185, I think, at that point.
Yeah, you know, like the seeds were planted, but monitoring the growth or where I was at, where my head was at, where my ego was at, was in a very different place. And until you kind of learn to shed those layers, you can't really see the purpose behind your work. But I knew I've always kind of been interested in the unseen, like representing the unseen. So, you know, I think that shines sometimes. But it's interesting. Back then, I started, mentoring an artist. Loves, you remember Loves?
Yeah, I love someone.
Yeah, I love someone. Like I think around that time, it's been 8 years maybe since that started mentoring him, and he's taken painting to a place I never got to.
Really?
Yeah, because
right.
paint is awesome in the sense like it is this plastic interface between you and the world. Like here, I'm going to give you this window, that's this static window.
Yep.
For you to enter. But once you start playing with the dimension of space, it's hard to reduce back just the surface. Like I love painting for free. I love just going and doing a piece under a bridge. No, you know what I mean? I'm not really into the big mural anymore. It doesn't give me the same satisfaction of execution, you know, and I actually get more joy out of working with Loves and Loves directing me. My youth telling me, yo, Jabs, do that part. And I'm like, sure, let's go. You know, you're in charge here. This is your thing.
I was there at the early stages, and that was not the dynamic.
No. You know, I've been challenging him in different ways. Like there's this concept called anamorphic. You know, anamorphic is you don't see the entire piece until you move to a certain position.
Oh, yeah. I've been seeing what you've been doing, bro.
Right? So he loves that. We play with that, and, you know, we challenge each other. Yo, can we fuck with people? Can I swear here? I don't know if I can swear.
Yeah, of course. Be you. You
know, can we hide this? We hide this aspect of the mural until they walk around till here, and we play with all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, he still wants to replicate or give a style to an existing object in the world. Here's a glass. I want to render this glass. And people love that. People are drawn to this aesthetic of what the glass looks like. But I come from a place where no one cares what the fuck the glass looks like. The glass exists. Why do I have to replicate it? If you really wanted to take a photo of it, you can understand the science behind how to draw in proportion the glass, like the still life drawing. It's good to understand that proportion, but you're reducing your consciousness to the level of just replicating an existing object.
Yeah.
You're not understanding the object. You're not.
I want to draw back on something that you said a little bit earlier, Jah, which I think was pretty prolific. And it's that we, especially when describing ourselves in like that elevator speech that you opened up with, we start to try to divide these time boxes, right? And I think that classically those don't work for people who pursue a creative career, right? Who pursue what seems to be, in my short term of knowing you, kind of like a match of your spiritual self, your creative self. And I guess I wonder, like, are there events that led to that? Have you always been that way? And it was really like those seeds were always planted below the dirt? Or like, what led you to that point where, you know, somewhat in the middle of your career, you say, all right, I want to start to, both re-educate to, I'm sure, an expense out of your pocket. These guys are talking about neighborhoods in Toronto. So for our US listeners, where we have just a horrible education system, it's not exactly the same, but it is similar in a resource investment perspective, right? Sure. Assuming that your time is your resource. So like, can you take us through like some of those like tactical points that may have happened in your career there that start to lead you to the person where you are today, to be able to kind of free both that creative and spiritual side to work together?
Yeah. I mean, I think I would say the first moment where I really realized that I wanted to push the boundaries of what I was doing, because when I grew up, I went to elementary school in Victoria, BC. And in Victoria, BC, at my school, there were 2 brown guys. Okay. One Chinese guy, not even a black guy, and everyone else was white. And so
Victoria is a little island off the coast, right?
On Vancouver Island. Yeah,
it's tiny.
And I remember like going through some serious shit, like where I had to fight dudes, like where people were just on my case for the color of my skin. Okay. Right, mm-hmm. And that's not a thing normal. A lot of people deal with this shit in different capacities. So I used basketball as my way to deal with people, because I was like, listen, these guys want to come at me like this. That's the one with, but I could play ball. I taught myself the game so that all the dudes would always choose me to play on their team. So I gained respect. I used basketball, and I was like, oh, okay, so now they won't fuck with me, really, right? That wasn't necessarily the case, but it made me want to like fight, to like, I don't know, have a voice. And so I ended up becoming like being elected a school president amongst all this community that at one point hated me, or at least I felt that way. And so it really got in my mind thinking about what does it mean to like how much of a drive can the human spirit have to overcome shit? And this is not necessarily leading to your spiritual question yet, but it gets there. So I was always contemplating in my head, like, what does it take to overcome, the barriers that we face? And, the next thing that comes to my head is when I was like 12 or 13, I moved back to Toronto, where I was born. Maybe I was 13. And I go into to the art class, and the guy's like, what do you guys, you have to say this project that you want to work on. And I go, okay, I want to do this. I want to do a graffiti piece. And like my professor's like, graffiti? He's like, aren't you Muslim? And I go, whoa, like what does that have to do with anything? And he goes, yo, if you look at your history, Arabic calligraphy in the Islamic tradition is basically the starting point of calligraphy, and most of these skills and techniques have just been recycled through other forms of writing, culminating in contemporary graffiti. Yeah, like you might not have been using spray paint 1,000 years ago, but the outline, the nibbed brush, the 3D, all of these aspects come from Islamic calligraphy. So maybe you want to study your history a bit more. And I was like, whoa, this guy just blew my mind. This guy just told me. And so I think that at that point, I decided, okay, I got to learn Arabic. Like my parents I'm Muslim, but Islam is not a monolithic religion. We have many different faces, many pluralistic, linguistic, ethnic identities. My family is East African with Indian and Persian blood. So we're already a mixture of all these things.
Yeah, what language are you supposed?
You know what I'm saying? So, but when I got close, when I started looking at Arabic, I started realizing that each letter of the 28 letters represents a phase of the moon. So already deep-seated, planted seed there was like, writing is not just the art of communication. This is like understanding the order of the cosmic universe.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So if I could answer your question by saying those kind of, maybe the first story, I don't even know if they're relations, but the second story for sure is like, I was planted in my head as a teenager that the art that I was pursuing was a language to deal with a much higher and much like an invisible tradition, essentially. And that every time I scraped away to try and dig deeper, it was like you would land on another breadcrumb, and it would be like, oh shit, wasn't even looking for this, but this is dope. And it just kept opening and opening and opening until the whole practice is just like steeped in the idea of wanting to be closer to what we call light. Like literally is what we refer to as a divine. If we had to refer to a divine origin as something, we'd refer to it as light, or nur is the Arabic word for it. So that's what we're doing. We're searching for nur.
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Mike from the show. I know. You hear more than enough from me. But I just wanted to take a second to thank each and every one of you individually. There's thousands of you out there, which is absolutely mind-blowing to Ryan and I. That said, it's so inspiring. We're so excited to have reached so many people. The question is, what's next? How much better can we make it? How much bigger can we go? If you've got any thoughts, don't hesitate to share them with us. But I promise you, Ryan and I have plenty of ideas, plenty of new content, and just plenty of excitement ahead. Look out, 2021. We're coming for you.
I'm just going to keep going back to things that, because like, bro, I remember when it was like, hey, are you doing this wall, this piece? Or I just saw something you put up the other day. And then I remember the first time, it was like Senate, Senate Creations, that other wall in Cabbagetown. And you put a piece on that wall, and that at that time, your art had changed. And it didn't, not so much visually, because for an idiot like me just driving by, similar colors, similar pop. But like when I would go and like talk to you while you were working, it was just like, whoa, Javid's not like whoa in a bad way, but it was just like, whoa, this is evolving into something much deeper and much heavier that I appreciated, because I was like, even if I don't understand it, visually, it's beautiful. And that's an entryway, and like, that's what I appreciated. So, because I'll be honest, Javid, most of this stuff, you're the only buddy I got that goes into these realms and these things. And yeah, it's always a new education for me, but I've always thought you were kind of, you were gentle and you were very open and like, hey man, if you're curious about this, I'll talk to you about this all day. You ain't got to know shit about it. And you don't have to be buying everything I'm selling, but you just, your passion can sometimes be intimidating, because it's like, I don't want to tell him to go back, but I really want to fully understand it the way he's expressing it, but sometimes it's high level shit, man. And I shouldn't have phrased that in that way, but,
well, the interesting thing there is, you can come across people that maybe are talking about this shit, but if you cannot find a way to access, like to be accessible to people through whatever you're making, whether you're selling something or whatever it is, it's not going to really be that effective, right? And there's levels to it. You might not want to sell to everyone. You just want to sell to a particular audience who has an appetite for that thing.
That's fair.
And, this is one of these projects I did with a rotating container, and the container rotates to follow planets. People were like, what the fuck is that? Like, I don't even understand. Like, what are you doing? Does this even make any sense? But when you're in front of this object, if you have no clue what's going on, there's at least enough aesthetically appealing moments for you to be drawn into the conversation at some degree. I think that's like, for example, like the pyramids. If you go and you have the impact, you have no clue. You might not know nothing about the pyramid, but the freaking scale and monumentality of that artifact is enough to have you start questioning. And really, that's
a piece of art that is a universal language. In the same way that music in a beat, right, from, let's just say from continent to continent, and listeners could pick whichever continents they want to, with the similar reaction across peoples culturally. One of the things that struck me really quickly when you were explaining that was that, Mike, you were really complimenting, I think, the narrative that Javid has been able to maybe build in the past decade. But it also occurred to me, because I'm fortunate enough to know a decent amount of artists in some similar mediums, but the ones that I think that are like happiest are the ones who figure out a way to have some stick with itness over the decade, right? Like whatever let's say resources art creates for you, and that could be money, that could be freedom, that could be, insert blank, because I think it's important for the creator to define. But one of the things I think that occurred to me when you were talking about that is that being able to interact with those people, like the Mikes of that story, of that example, is mutually beneficial, because of course it helps you understand art that you're going to be creating to put forward, but also that communication itself is such an important part to a lot of creatives that I have been close to for years, especially in those times when creatives get low, because I think that's part of it. And I don't want to generalize everybody, but I do think that part of creating something beautiful is some time in between creating something else that's deliverable in the same way. So I'm curious if that rings home for you in a career of life, in a career as a creator. Do you find those two things invariably together? And like, what would you say to somebody who doesn't feel like they could step out and talk to a white dude with a beard walking by, or maybe even Mike was even more clean shaven then, right?
Bro, I was literally a white dude in a suit. Right? Like I was, Javid and I were not in the same worlds. We just happened to be in the same, neighborhood.
I'm not sure you've ever thought about it that way before, right, Javid? Like, to you, maybe it's as simple as like stepping out and talk to people who are consuming what you love to put forward. But there are people that you encourage, and that's not a simple thing to step out and talk about your work.
The thing is, I appreciate that question, first of all, Ryan. The thing is that it's not enough for me to embody these cosmic principles, but not their ethics. And the ethics that are attached to the faith and the tradition I belong to is that you have to be open and generous and kind to all, from ants to people walking down the street who you might think have some kind of racial profiling against you, or who might be from a different class or might not speak your language. If someone comes across you, it's like they were meant to come across you, and you should treat them with all respect. And the ability to find common ground with somebody and share a moment with them is like a blessing. And to let that pass and consider it as insignificant, you're not really following the path that you claim to.
Oh, wow.
For example, for us, when somebody shows up at your door, you have to treat them like it's God.
They're there for a reason.
Visitors are super important to us. Guests are in our tradition, and that tradition is not just as an East African Indian. Like places I've traveled, I recently was in Turkey. It's like that. My wife is Iraqi; she can attest to that. It goes, and because that is the part of the faith that we call like exoteric. That's just how we interact, the social dynamic of it. And it has, this whole spiritual dynamic that I'm talking about, but you can't have one without the other, you know? So I actually love the challenge of relating to people who it might seem like I can't relate to. Because like, for example, if I can't explain why I'm doing something to my 6-year-old nephew, then I probably have some work to do. Like, I don't want to live in this world where I can't even communicate with you because of wherever you're from. I want to be able to. There might be levels to it. I might not have to get into my 6-year-old about like what cosmology is. We can just talk about, see that star over there? That's actually a planet.
Just plant that seed.
You know what I mean? It's that time of year that you're born. You're actually supposedly ruled by that planet. I don't know, but the bottom line is I try and find common ground with people, and I enjoy that because it teaches me, it humbles me as to like not to think that I'm something great just because I'm exploring all this stuff. It's not that. It's really that can you actually articulate it? Can you share this? Is there
Truly
something?
share it. That's
Can they be
exactly
sharing with you? If somebody approaches you and speaks a certain way, it doesn't mean you have nothing to take from them. So,
No, I agree fully, man. And I can honestly say, like,
so Mike
Javid,
had a lot to give to me that I didn't know.
I don't agree. I don't
anybody
agree.
can say that. I've seen you embody it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Okay, anybody could say that. That's really hard for me. I mean, I don't put as much heart into what I put forward for the deliverables in my career, and I can't take open feedback like what you just described. That, I mean, to me, that kind of helps to further define that spiritual connection that you've kind of been threading through the show here, which, by the way, is much different than I would say what a lot of people experience when they experience cultures outside of their own.
Right.
Like, it's a little more generalization and a little bit more trying to like force understand the complexities that you're ready
simplifying
to accept
things,
from another
right?
culture. Yeah.
You want to minimize and simplify. I sat there and watched this guy defend his thesis to a group of the old white men that he's talking about that, you know, unfortunately think they're in charge of this shit. But when it comes time to the back and forth, the Q&A, oh man, there was some awkward moments, but I took a lot of pride because I had known you for about 2 years at that point.
Yeah, that was
and
funny.
Not to be I am a dick for saying this out loud, but I was definitely the only one of your buddies that showed up in a suit because I snuck up from work. But it was like Javid had an audience, bro. I didn't have nobody came to watch me defend my thesis, and like he had friends and loved ones there. And the challenge was, this is real, man. His advisors, I don't want to mistitle your master's thesis, but what I took from it was Javid was basically showing graffiti in a modern world and like in how it could be applied to architecture. I mean, I remember there were dynamic panes, there was drone applications, there was some very outside of the box stuff, but basically there's a couple kind of important people in the room that just couldn't get past the idea of graffiti equals vandalism equals some racial stereotypes. And like they had the audacity to bring that shit up. Like they just came out and like shared their ignorance. And I'm telling you, man, basically a couple of Javid's friends were like, who the fuck? Who said that? Like, and Javid sat there and said, okay, well, let me explain to you. Like, let me give you the full picture because I understand your take, even though it's fucked up and limited. And I honestly, I was just like, holy shit, man. Like my palms were sweating a couple times.
Keep in mind, I'm not always diplomatic, and I don't always.
No, I know that. I've been with you in other places too, but you knew.
I love killing with kindness. Like if somebody's gonna come at me with some stuff that I think is like maybe they haven't seen all sides of it, so they're not seeing the full picture. I really actually get like hyped up over it. I'm like, oh, okay. So let me turn this around for you so that you can see the other side. You know, when I worked in the community center, like a drop-in youth space for 7 years on Bloor Street, which is like, you know, one of the main strips in Toronto. And we were in a basement called The Loft. It's ironic. The Loft was an acronym. It stands for Life, Opportunity, Food, and Technology. And we had a mentor. He was a padrino. He was like the godfather of our neighborhood. Senor Bailey from Chile. He was Jamaican Chilean. And he was just like dapper, bro. Like every day, fresh to death. Like just, you know, and he was my direct boss. It was him. I was underneath him. And then I would deal with all the artists. We were a community center and we create art programs.
Is this the one Danilo was pretty heavily involved in this one. Okay,
you know, we had a good run for almost a decade. So Mr. Bailey would come through, you know, and he would regulate everybody and anybody. You came in there and you were too pumped up, he'd bring you down. You came in there and you were too sad, he'd bring you up. And, you know, he just knew what to say to you. And it was the art of insulting you and making you laugh at the same time. That's what he did. He told you what it is, but made you feel good about it. So that you could get over the fact that you were being told. And I just used to watch him and be like,
That's
this
skill,
guy
man.
is a wizard with communication. Like, so I kind of try and embody that with people. Is like, I'm like, listen, I don't know, there's got to be ways to soften the load of when you're going to drop something on somebody,
Sure.
And
Well,
got
I
some
think it shows more maturity in communication. It really does, right? Like I think the human instinct the hurt human instinct is to conflict, and the balanced human instinct is to love. And like in those moments, especially when you're addressing a room, like I think all of our listeners, no matter what level of education they're within, sitting here today, could think about a point where they're addressing a group of people, right? And it's a mixed group of people. And I think that if you can figure out, now, by the way, it's more challenging, I think, through the course of conflict to keep yourself balanced, regardless of, how you do that. But if you could choose to communicate with love instead of conflict, it's way easier, it's kind of like trying to, change people's, opinions on social media by trolling them, right? It's just not really,
that works.
That's not a productive habit.
Calm down, you're acting crazy.
I don't find it that different in lecture environments. I really don't. I think like by challenging somebody's idea obtusely as compared to challenging somebody's idea collaboratively, it's like it's really an artful command that you could build into your own set. You know.
No, it's a skill, man. And we've probably all had 50-year-old bosses that had not yet developed that skill. Yeah. I mean, not everyone gets it. Unfortunately, it's not an integral part of leadership or communication or management. It's an awesome part, though. You know what I mean? Like, there's shitty leaders. They still lead, but I apologize for this because we're having a really good conversation, and I'm gonna kind of transition it to a slightly different world here because, well, selfishly, I want to know about it. You mentioned early on basketball as a love. You were a fanatical fan. But I didn't like in the job that I knew, bro. Like, didn't know if I knew you knew the game, but I didn't know if you even cared about a single team. In all my time in Toronto, bro, I mean, we had Bosch, we had some All-Stars, we had DeMar and Kyle, right? And we knew what that was gonna be. But I want you to talk to me a little bit about not last year, but 2 years ago run. I mean, not just what you experienced as a fan, dude, but like, because I don't know if you heard it, but
2 years ago, that's the one before the championship?
Well, no, technically they didn't just win the championship. They won the championship.
Okay, so we're talking about 2019 20
Yeah, let's talk about 20, because I was talking
about pre-bubble lifetime.
Okay, hold on a second.
He's going to go get something. You remember, Ryan, I was in Toronto the night they won it. And then we did that interview with Lawrence the morning after.
One of the very first interviews.
You want me to talk about this?
Bro, what is that? Why do you have a ring?
Yeah, because, in Toronto, that's how we do it.
So Javid,
also have one of these.
For those of us who are watching the channel, is showing. I hope that's a replica. Maybe I want to ask: is that a replica or is that?
I don't know. This camera could be confusing you about what size.
That's true. It seems as if Javid has acquired some legit paraphernalia.
You
got to tell our audience how you ended up in LA last year. Like
San Francisco, man. You know what? It was a crazy ride. I have a boy named my homie Sam. Is like, he's the super van without the turban. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Okay.
And he's had season tickets for ages. He has it in the same place. It's like the corner of 318. People know the Air Canada Center. It's like you're against the concrete wall in the same corner that Kawhi hit the shot. Like we're right above.
Yeah. All right.
So when the going gets, like when the Raptors hit past the first round, we don't miss games at home. We have to be there. Because
how many seats does he have?
I don't have much money, but I'll spend my money on the seats. He has 2.
Yeah.
Okay. And whenever we play a new city, like we go to that city for a game, just to experience it there, right? Just to get booed. We've been booed in so many different ways. Like I was in New Jersey and like an 8-year-old, like a 12-year-old kid was like booing me in Jersey.
Yeah, it's different. There's definitely regional.
And Detroit's the best. Like, do you love Detroit fans? They love to shit on us. They're
mean.
awesome.
They're mean.
But anyways, that playoffs, it was the Milwaukee series, and we had lost the first two, and we won 3 in a row. So we hadn't even finished that series. And a buddy of mine was like, "Yo, can you paint our wall with something with Kawhi?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." And he was like, "Can you do Kawhi screaming like when he hit the shot against Philly?" And I was like, "Yeah, Kawhi screaming is cool, but nobody sees Kawhi screaming ever. Like, it's not represent Kawhi, you know?"
Yeah.
Ryan, you're a basketball head, so before I get too deep into this,
Yeah.
So I was like, "I'm not going to pay." So we had this debate: Kawhi screaming, serious Kawhi. We ended up getting serious Kawhi, and then they're like, "Put King of the North," and we're like, "Okay, we're going to take the Big E crown and put it on his head on a tilt, right?" And write King of the North. So we did this, and the next day, I have no idea how. I really don't, except that my bro, Sotio, the photographer at Ademi, came and he took a shot, and he's super well connected, massive following. He put it on a story. The next day, Associated Press came and took a photo. The next morning, Sunday morning, Associated Press, and is not Game 6 of the Milwaukee series has not even been played. And the shit went viral. The very next day, I'm not even joking you, ESPN called me 2 days later.
ESPN, not TSN, ESPN.
No, none of the Canadian media decided to call us. They just posted it and shared it. And like the front of the newspaper of like 4 newspapers at once, or 3 newspapers, had the mural and had like they in the title it'd be like this person, and they put the person's name. A person was taking a photo of it. This person's name taking a photo of mural recently done. Not our names, not the artist names. But luckily, we fucking tagged our names big, our whole Instagram handles big on the piece.
On the piece, yeah.
On the piece itself. So, and then everyone used it, like New Balance used it in a commercial. New Balance put it in a commercial, then emailed us and said, "Hey, is it okay if we put it in this commercial?" And I was like, is this really happening?
Yeah, dude. You mean like right away? This is within hours? Like
literally, like it was blown up. So the next day in the morning, that night we finished it, we won Game 6. So the next morning I went and I wrote the finals on it.
Oh, hell yeah.
The finals logo on it.
Sure.
Right? To make it official.
I remember when that stuff was. A while back when Mike and I dreamt up the idea and the premise of conventioNOT podcast, I never imagined that it would really even last this long. And so I wanted to come and break into the episode just for a second to thank all the people who help us make this show happen. We've got some help from a production level. We've got some help from a sponsorship level. We've got some help from a community and a listener level. All those people are important. For us, it's been a journey, and it's really taught us to both listen more and try to speak more clearly. So hopefully we're doing that to you today in this episode. And I'm hoping that you might take a chance and share this episode with somebody who you know. Let them hear for themselves. That's how we get more listeners, and that's helped us build this community. And we know you're a part of it. So thanks. Back to the show. I've been following your career for quite some time because you guys were knowing each other, and I'm just an art fan, right? Like, it's actually this piece that's behind me here. The guys from Atlanta, similar story to you in some different ways, but as far as art education and treating the community goes. But I remember when that picture went live because we were really just starting the podcast. Yeah, there it is. Mike's holding it up. We were really just kind of like getting the podcast going, and your name came up as like one of the people where you're like, man, should we be able to reach out? And I'll admit, I'll be one of the first to admit, and Mike, I think you would too. It's tough to select the people that you know that you might be willing to invite to come on to like this type of intimacy sharing like you're having with us today. And so I've been mystified by your career by the change in your media. Not necessarily the change from a wall to a canvas, but the change in the style, right? I almost liken it to some of your work that I used to follow a decade ago would liken me to like a single needle tattoo. If you guys are familiar with single needle tattoos, very dot specific type things, as compared to now, which is so much more, which is more dynamic in so many ways, right? Yeah. And so this isn't a question, this is a diatribe. Like I'm truly infatuated with your work, and I have been for a long time, man. Long time. So it's just cool to be able to recognize that. And then it's also cool to understand and have our listeners understand that sometimes just making something like that because you were just in the spot is the thing. It doesn't always have to be a deal that you worked out to make sure that your Instagram handle is prominent on the piece. Yeah. It's just that it's part of that. It's putting that forward.
For sure. And that's a great point. Like sometimes the piece is not about your style. Sometimes it is. For a long time, like I wish I had a style. Like guys who were a few years ahead of me, like Elixir, Medaya, these guys always did their thing. Versus at that time when I was coming up, I didn't just do my thing. I did what that site wanted. Or what a certain, so you know what I mean? And so I didn't really come across what my style was until very late compared to a lot of other people who were in the, 2, 3, 4 year buffer zone of, your contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, those cats he just named definitely had a very, very distinct, but I don't know, man, as someone who knew nothing, I felt like I learned a lot just walking around those streets, and I never wondered if it was a piece of yours. Like you were
I
distinct.
think that's one of the coolest thing about people who have street art in their medium is an ability to do that, right? Because I think what you're describing there is you do a lot of production art, right? But like that allows people to blur the line. From my perspective, because my home is filled with street artist pieces, and I walk into a lot of friends who are art fans who have. It's been over the past decade too, like this time frame that you guys are talking about, where it's moved from a rattle can to, and I'm not trying to be insulting by any perspective, Jah, but it's moved from a rattle can into a canvas that's framed, and it's a piece that could be sold to provide a guy a living. I shouldn't say a person a living. On both ends of the art, right? Like it doesn't have to be a $3,000 100 square foot piece. It could be all of those things. It's
important to have a fine arts practice if you are a muralist. In one sense, it's seasonal in Canada, so you can't always be out there rocking. And in two, we don't have much private investment in it. Our public investment is slowly going up, but our per capita spending on public arts is like one of the lowest in North America. We're nowhere close to even Montreal, who's the highest in Canada. And we're nowhere close to like San Francisco or Philadelphia, which are much, you know what I mean? So Toronto has a lot of work to do in terms of public art, specifically street art. For me, I never actually was looking about being I think there was maybe a period of time where I wanted to be like at the top of the game of something in terms of street art, but I didn't have the same foundation that some of these other guys had in graffiti. I was more playing this game of like murals and canvas and fine art and youth at work. And so like I was in a mix, my hands was in a mix of different things. So then it kind of laid a foundation for me to be like, okay, well, I'm going to move into this world of temporary site specific art, like what you call production art, where it was like it's really almost like an orchestrator. I'm like bringing together different elements. Like my last exhibition was in front of Union Station during COVID. It was like a passive art show, and 20 hands touched the work. Some of the pieces I didn't even touch. Like I you know what I mean? But my whole thing was orchestrating the process.
You're like Chaluli.
What I'm looking at is the efficiency of it. I'm looking at, there's obviously the theme and coming up, and I work very closely with, I don't know if you know Carol Ann.
Yep.
Yeah, Carol Ann and I work very closely together because she's graphic designer, she's experienced in architecture, and she's a graffiti artist, street artist. So she understands this interdisciplinary world. And what we're doing is we're trying to create work where you look at it and you're like, how the fuck did he make that?
That's dope, man.
You know what I mean? And there's one thing to look at a painting and say, hey, how the fuck did he paint that? But it's another thing to look at the work and be like, but how did you actually make it? You know, it's a different.
I haven't heard that name in a while. I'm really glad to hear that you and Carol Ann are still working together.
Yeah, I mean, she's awesome. She's incredibly super talented, but also just her demeanor, her positivity, and our chemistry is great. So I give mad props to her for, you know.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear she's still, you know, she's in the game and keeping busy. And there's a part of it that that person leads into this conversation very well, is that, and I don't want this to come off incorrectly, but with the graffiti world, graffiti specifically, there is there's a lot of back and forth. You know, I'm just going to simplify it by saying there's a juvenile aspect about running around the world and wanting to write your name everywhere, right? And I know that's a horrible thing to say, and I probably just pissed off so many people out there. But when I met you, Javid, I met you, you were embroiled to an extent because, like you said, you wanted to be playing that game and you wanted to be a name in that game. And in Toronto at that time, man, there's a lot of just juvenile shit. And I appreciated from you. You were like, I don't want to do this. I just want to be an artist. Like, I grew up and I gathered, like, you grew up maybe getting into some fist fights here and there and getting into some trouble here and there, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm projecting onto you, and I shouldn't be, but I'm so excited to see, and I'm trying to transition into like today's Javid, who doesn't have to worry about some of that simplistic juvenile bullshit of like people tagging over your piece that you painstakingly put up and it's supposed to have all this meaning and blah, blah, blah. And now though, you're beyond that. You don't have time for that shit. Yeah. You're designing, you're curating physical things. And, you know, you just mentioned an exhibition, but if you wouldn't mind, I would love it if you'd share a little bit more about the container homes. And, you know, that I know that's not the technical term for them, but I want everyone to appreciate that, like, this guy that we've been talking about, all this heavy duty, deep spiritual things and a lot of graffiti and mural conversations. You're a licensed architect who's also designing not the container homes that Ryan or I could probably pull off, but multi-level dwellings. I mean, like, open up a little bit about that. Ryan, I think we could cut a hole in the side of a box, couldn't we? I mean, maybe.
Nobody's trusting me with the tack or MIG welder. Let me tell you that.
Sure. I'll say a couple things first. One,
the
graffiti wars are difficult. Like, graffiti battles are difficult, but it comes with the turf. If you're going to be making art in the streets, at a certain point, someone's going to feel a certain way. When you take a wall, they think it's their wall. I went through some beef, and I look back on it, and like, I did not enjoy those times, but it made me tougher. It made me understand what I was getting into, and at the same time, respect the culture. Like, you have to respect graffiti in all of its forms. You can't just like fully colored legal pieces. You know, you have to understand that it comes from somebody who started playing the piano, might have been shit. It takes a while to get your tag, right? It takes a while to understand how to do a throwy. It takes a while to like take, you know, not really. Toronto, you could probably take over the city in a month if you went like twice a week hard, you know. Yeah. But let's just be real. It takes a while to get to that stage of like, you know, where you're a Scam or a Bacon or any of these guys that are, you know. So I give mad respect to both legal and illegal side of it. And I was caught in between because I am in between. Yeah. But I got mad respect for all aspects of graffiti culture. And in terms of the architecture thing, I have to correct you. I'm not licensed architect.
When I said licensed,
I'm part of the Ontario Architects Association, who follows me very closely and has told me, listen, Javid, you're not capital A architect. So
Fair
don't, you know what I mean?
get
So
it.
because like
I understand.
The Toronto Star called me one. So what was I supposed to do? You know, they're supposed to fact check, I guess.
Yeah. They misidentified you. I did the same thing.
It's all good, man. Like honestly, it's more about it's the thing about experience and not the authority calling you a thing. Like anyone gonna try, even someone who wants to build a clean box, go and try and build a clean box if you haven't fucked with carpentry and get it all level and plumb on all the edges and mitered. Go do it because you think you can do it.
It's not that
You know
easy.
what I mean? You might need to build 10 of those boxes before you get it level and plumb on every side. Don't show the fasteners. You know what I'm saying? So, architecture, and I work in a small studio called Wonder Inc. with another architect named Jason Halter. And Jason as well is non-licensed. We are both industrial designers, actually, in the large, in the like authoritative framework of it all.
Makes sense.
But I did pass my architecture exams, and I only have a few hours left when I can declare to be licensed. So I'm right at the end of my journey. But right now, I'm just like I'm good at where I'm at. I don't need to be licensed to operate. You know, we work with structural engineers, and if you build under a certain scale, because we are what we call modular.
Yep.
So the size, we don't do anything more than 3,000 square feet, really. And we don't go over 3 stories. So within that size of building, a structural engineer can take liability. You don't need an architect.
So all that legal shit aside, talk about the cool stuff.
Sorry,
what are the spaces like? That's what I want to hear.
I had to set the record straight.
All you had to do was say, "Hey, you got to edit out that licensed part."
Disclaimer. No, we'll throw a little disclaimer in there. Industrial architect, industrial designer.
It's all good, man. It's really all good. Like I think you get it from both sides, man. Like you can't make the streets happy, and you can't make these freaking associations happy. You just go out there and do what you do.
This is a struggle.
Put food on the plate and, you know, enjoy your life. Like I can't.
This is a struggle in my own home. So my wife and my father-in-law both work in architecture. They design university and high school, elementary, so on and so forth. And right now, actually upstairs, the leader of the firm is accepting the role to be the president of the AIA, the American
that's a
Architecture Association, right?
Oh yeah, no, it is.
My father-in-law, who is phenomenal, has built building upon building, and he's architect with a capital A. You guys would, I would be so curious to introduce the two of you guys. And you might know his firm. I'm not going to mention it because I'm about to mention, but he's not participatory in the associations because he thinks that from a creative perspective, they don't tie well together, you know? And so I don't want to put my father-in-law on blast. I've always identified with that structure because the works that he's done next to, again, like this other gentleman, he's an equal partner of his in his firm. You know, they're both at the end of their careers, but he's always said that, you know, the institution of architecture isn't as important as the art of architecture. And I seriously can't wait to play this segment for him. I know he listens to the show off and on again, but I cannot wait to play what you're talking about because it's so dynamic to the things that I hear one of those like old white dudes say, very much so humbly. He's, you know, responsible to help curate and develop new team members and he develops amazing young architects. But humbly, I know that he wants to always create that bridge in between the spirit of space and the very much so design of a building that can be constructed. And so, man, I know we're getting towards the end here about this. Mike, do you have any more questions? Like we could keep going and going and going. Unfortunately,
don't give me any freedom. I do have one other question, but
wait, can I comment on what he said before you go in there?
So sorry.
Yeah. When I was going into the architecture thing, I was very cognizant of artists who became architects or architects who claimed they're artists and what their practices were like. And I came across, so architects who want to be artists are very good at, it comes down to your will. As an artist, you make things and they're just your will. I don't have any other, like I might want to take a stance on a societal issue, or I'm working with a certain material, you know, and it has its limitations, but it's my shit. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
Check. The architect who's an artist is like still tapping into that big word zeitgeist. Like they're still tapping into like what fits in this context. What does this site demand? You know what I mean? They're asking and questions and approaching a project. Like I'll approach a project, doesn't matter what it is, with a site plan and an elevation and a 3D model of it, and I'll throw lights in and render it. Like those things are fundamentally going to change the way you practice the art than somebody who's not using those tools, and that mindset of like, does it fit into this context? And so the willfulness of the architect who's become an artist is different than the artist who has become an architect, I found. And so I think it's really interesting. And then and my other point I'll make before you hop in is jumping from little a to capital A architect. It boils down to a thing about scale. Like I love that the homes that we do, which are on average 1,000 square foot, we put a couple containers. We actually don't like to just use a container. We like container meets wood frame, or container meets concrete, so that you can move from a small. Sometimes a container is limited. Even a high cube is like 9 foot when we put the ceiling in. Then you move into an expanse that has 10 foot, 12 foot, or you move from like this to that. Similarly, horizontally, 2 containers together is nice for a bedroom, 14-foot width, but you don't necessarily want, you want to be able to move from one feeling of a space to another to get that play. So scale is really important to us because we can get our hands dirty. We can go on site with the contractor. We can work out a detail together. There's a lot of like gray areas. The budget stays around $1 million or less, 500,000 sometimes. The client is very hands-on. We get hands-on. I've worked on bigger projects. Like I once worked on a seniors residence, 6 stories, or on a mosque that was 20,000 square foot. And man, the red tape around you getting involved in the detail or
different structures,
the level that you can work, it's just a completely different game. There's so many layers of administration, and it might be cool to make the big move. Yeah, we're having this thing cantilever 20 feet out, but resolving it, getting it done, being on site with it is a completely different ball game than a 2,000 square foot house. Where you can kick back and have a beer with the contractor and like work out a detail. It's just, and so I prefer the hands dirty. I get to go there. We don't have none of these. My field reviews don't need to have much more than a sketchbook. I don't have to file back what it was. I don't have to, we do budgeting, et cetera, and contract administration. But, compared to those big scale projects, man, we get to focus on the art of it. And not, the large, so we might not do a university. Inshallah, one day when I'm licensed, I'll do a mosque or a library or a small school or something like that. But I don't have the dreams, some of the guys I graduated with who are in the capital A, the Diamond and Schmidt, and they'll see a project and they won't be able to see it through because it goes on to another team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, they'll work on hospital designs for 2 years and it won't even make it into a permit because the funding cycle will have changed.
I'd love to see some designs into some schools with some modular pieces. I think that, there's not time probably to dive into that today, but I bet that's a whole creative discussion about a classroom in a box that could be shipped across the world. That's just like, it kind of like gives me goosebumps just to look. I'm checking out your site while you're talking a little bit.
That's the fun thing about the modular, right? Is like this idea that you can make a lot of it in a warehouse and then ship it somewhere. We did a dental. Get this, lens crafters did a study with the University of Michigan, and they figured out that eye problems was an early detection for diabetes.
Okay.
So we worked with University of Michigan and lens crafters to design a dental and eyeglass. A medical and eyeglass dual container with a roof in between, and sent it to Jamaica, where they do detection of diabetes through eye care.
A clinic. basically a clinic, like a testing facility.
Yeah.
Independent.
And so we
diagnostic.
designed and built in collaboration with University of Michigan, then fabricated in store stack in Toronto, and then shipped down to Jamaica to be installed on site. And I unfortunately did not get to go to Jamaica. But hopefully one day.
Short end of the stick on that, bro.
Yeah,
I mean,
like, write it in the contract. We have to be in Jamaica. And they're like, I don't know if we'll make it there. But
you just have to say, we have to make sure it was installed as built. It's an insurance thing. I have to go see it get put in place.
You know, like I'm always on Jason's case. I'm like, we have to be on site.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
I feel like every time I go to Jamaica, I meet a lot of Canadians. Jamaica's a popular travel place for my wife and I. We go there every couple of years. Actually, I went there pre-COVID. I came in as COVID shut the world down
right before
this year.
Nice.
And man, you got a lot of Canadians in Jamaica. Really great resort conversation, Jamaica, above and beyond all the rest of the islands. It's because the attendees come from all over the world. It's better, I think.
I got one more complex question. That's the word I've come up with. I think anyone listening here, probably most people that meet you, Javid, like you've got a lot to give. And I mean that in like the most positive and, serious way possible. And I wonder how you're taking advantage of that. And if your current, you mentioned Love Some earlier, and I know there's, a mentee mentorship relationship there, but have you made any efforts to follow in the steps of, Senior Bailey, and kind of go back into that community-based mentorship of maybe some younger mentees? I know that's a very heavy, long question.
No, I mean, it's interesting. There's another artist that I was mentoring around the same years as Loves. Her name is Daniela. Muisca is her artist name, and she's from Colombia. And I've gone to Colombia 5 times in the last 7 years. I joined a graffiti crew down there, and I love painting down there. And so in art wise, I decided really I didn't want to take on more community or mentorship roles, although that. Every once in a while, I'll do a talk at a school or OCAD or things like that. But I decided to take on young designers, where I thought that would be an interesting, and not formally, because obviously I'm not licensed, so I can't formally training them. But I have 2 or 3 younger designers that I work with, and I like the scale of it. I don't like the scale of doing the formal programming, because I felt at the end of that period of my life that the organization you work at in the nonprofit community sense has goals that are just not the same as mine. That's when fair. It comes to giving back. There's all sorts of other, things that I found were just coming in the way. So I just prefer to do it informally with young people. Particularly in the Muslim community. In the Muslim community, I've been active for for a long time, and I continue to be a part of an organization called Muslim Fest, which is like North America's largest contemporary Islamic art celebration in Mississauga. And through that process, I come across young artists informally just by doing work, and I try and nurture those relationships. And with the young designers, it's really fun because, architecture is the type of thing where you don't have to land in designing buildings with those skills.
Yeah. You
could land anywhere with those skills, like UX design, film. You could go and work for a developer. There's plenty of ways where you can go. Internet, like web design, all sorts of architectures exist. So I appreciate that idea that I can give back, but I want to, and at times I feel that
you are
yeah.
I'm not sorry. I didn't mean to imply the way Senior Bailey was doing it was the way you need to do it. I meant, Javid, you're a natural teacher. You exude it. And I'm glad that you've put yourself in environments where and I don't mean, to be clear, I don't mean you're walking around bragging and you're walking around forcing yourself onto people. I mean, you're someone who has a lot to give, and when asked, you're more than happy to share. So you just checked all the boxes, bro. They're young people. You're talking to people, about faith, art, career. I mean, dude, there's no but. There's no but there. Sorry, but you are definitely mentoring a lot of. It sounds like.
It does occur to me that I wanted to be a faculty member, like to go into teaching and stuff. And I have a close friend of mine who went down to the University of Miami, and he's teaching over there architecture, Chris. And I'm watching that whole game, and I'm like, oh, this could be really interesting, academia. But there's something still dislocated from like the practice of art, particularly like a practice influenced by street art. It's too, you know what I mean? I prefer the like informal give back, and but I think that just naturally by working in a team environment, you are able to have those type of nurturing relationships with people, and I think that my artistic practice is really a team environment.
No, I literally, you did. I only freaked out when you said but. So I was like, whoa. There's no but here, bro. You're giving back, man. I love it. Ryan, what do you got?
I mean, I think this can continue to go on forever. What a pleasure to share some time and to share some vulnerability with you. I think like a lot of our guests, when we ask them to come on, they think, all right, well, I'm going to come on, I'm going to tell about myself. And you even open up that way, right? Like as a creator, I have to have my speech, but the following 50 minutes, like really, I know will be inspirational to some people who get to consume, and maybe like they're not at that spot, right? Like they're not at the component where they experience some of the successes you did, but they could identify with a kid getting called names at that age, or that they're struggling about like, I think one of the things I see with a lot of creators is like, how do I re-educate myself on a career where I haven't made a bunch of money? Is it worth to try to re-educate myself or to attend a university? Another thing, like we've covered so many things in that time. So I just appreciate that sincerely from the bottom of my heart. Let me ask this though, as we kind of close this down here. If I want to follow you, if I want to check out your work, if I want to check out the projects, give us the host of websites or spots to get involved with you. How do we do that?
Yeah, on the web, Javid Jah, Jazz JAH. So JavidJAH.com. That's an easy one. And on the Instagram, you put a Javid_Jah, and that's for like, I try to separate the art and the architecture a bit.
Sure.
So I have another handle which you can get, Javid.Jah. And I think that's pretty simple. Those are the only ways. I mean, you can call me if you want, but
start with the DM, maybe try the DM.
I'm sure there's I have some crazy hashtags though. I've definitely been playing with some cosmic architecture. You could try that out.
I like that.
Okay.
That takes you. There's obviously sacred geometry. I'd get lost with all those. But yeah, the rotating container. That's one I haven't seen. Haven't seen that out there internationally yet. So that project, that idea, I'm really happy that it was done in Toronto. With our crew, and I think we'll install it this year in Toronto. Is the year of public art, 2021. So there's going to be there's basically $5 million invested into a bunch of public art projects of various scales for the year. Oh. So hopefully, I think I'm involved in a few of them. They've accepted. So this year should be really fun in Toronto.
That's amazing, dude.
Oh, man. So when you're getting ready to come out of COVID, I always think that Toronto's a place where people need to travel anyway. I'm always astounded by the number of particularly Midwestern Americans who've never been to flipping Toronto. And I shame them. Them every time. I'm like, because you need to make the trip. I would say it again. So as you're planning that 2020 COVID trip, post COVID 2021 trip.
Yeah, we're like a doper Chicago.
I agree. I have
way doper Chicago, an international Chicago in a lot of ways.
You get into Toronto and you're like, really, this exists, and then but it's so small at the same time.
No, Toronto's everything. In the summer. I'm sorry, but it's everything in the summer. I'm not.
Don't come before May.
Yeah, right. At least not for your first trip, because that Winterfest is great, but you've got to be be ready for the wintertime thing. I think the other thing about Toronto is there's all the pieces of a good long weekend trip there. There's food, there's walkability, there's culture. It's just great. So unfortunately, we got to sign off here. I really
okay, man. Well, appreciate it, guys. Good to see you, Mike. Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Yeah, same to you. Cheers.
Thank you so much, man.
Skrilla on the track. ConventioNOT. What that means is unconventional. Been in the game of you, so comprehend what I'ma give to you. Cause in the instant you can turn your hustle to an institute. I can't stop, I'm on top because I'm conventioNOT. Immaculate how I be rapping it. When I be spitting, you know that you loving it. Covered in nothing above it, so you could go run with it. Now let's get back to it. Back to the basics. Carving out spaces. Practice patience for situations and all vibrations. I want all my eyes can see, and I'ma beat you there. I aim for variety like a sneakerhead. I'm game ready, keeping that thing steady. Climbing over the dragon. Now who wanna bang with me? Will you grow and change with me? Go through the same with me. For those that don't grow, they known to remain shifty. I'm working with all I got, so when you see me